All right. Questions for staff? Yes.
I wanted to know what caused you to be interested in this. What was the catalyst for your interest in the subject?
Well, I have a background in biology, so I'm sure that that's part of it that stemmed my interest. And then I grew up playing outdoors all the time, every weekend. But Bo and I and my friend Darren Dunn were hanging out, and maybe Al was there, I'm not quite sure. Was Al Nove there? Yeah. And we were hanging out in my husband's office one day, chatting like we do, and we started talking about how you never see horned lizards anymore. And so usually when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I said I'm going to make a documentary about that. And so 3 years later, the film is completed. Any questions?
I do. So clearly you've worked with Stephen before with music, but a kind of question for you is how, I know, so pull you in. What was the process that you guys, because the music was fantastic in the film, first of all. So what process did you guys use to create this music? I mean, what did she come to you asking for that made you create this?
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess the way it started, for me anyway, was I just came up with, I wanted the music to, obviously a primary importance is to get the mood and the setting and all those types of things, but I really wanted it to be kind of thematic and have some, you know, some melodies and things like that. So I think I just did some sketches, first of all, and gave them to you all while you were still filming and doing all that. And then we sort of watched clips and listened to things back and forth a little bit, and then pretty much from there, it was pretty close to the finished film. Well, it got shuffled around a lot, actually. You have the scene perfectly, well, not perfectly, but the best you can do, the music to it, and then it gets re-edited, right? So that happens. But anyway, not that often, no. But just looking at the amazing people who were interviewed and all the natural settings, and I mean, I guess I would just sit there and look at it and try to think what would go with it, but not overshadow it. But I guess.
So you're inspired by the imagery that you saw?
Absolutely. And by the way, I grew up in Ballinger, Texas, which I think is where one of the interview subjects is from too. Yeah. And I mean, one of my first memories is having a giant. This is really bad, but I had a giant planter, and I had a horny toad that, in my mind, I had as a pet. And probably it was 2 hours, but in my mind it was for weeks and weeks. I had this pet horny toad, but it was probably about 2 hours when I was 3 or 4. So that's one of my first memories as well.
I see one back here.
So where's Four Canyons, and what is the access that people have to come there and visit?
Okay, well, Four Canyon Preserve is located along the Canadian River. It's in the southeastern part of Ellis County. It's really hard for me to tell you how to get there because it is in absolutely the middle of nowhere. It would be southeast of Barnett, southwest of Isai, west of Camargo. If you look at a map of the Canadian River, when it enters the state, it makes these 3 snaky bends. And the Four Canyon Preserve is sort of at the top of the middle bend of the Canadian in this far southeastern part of Ellis County. It's owned by the Nature Conservancy. We acquired the property in 2004. It's one of our newer preserves. It's mostly intact, around 4,000 acres in size, mixed in shortgrass prairie, and we've got some really cool canyon woodlands there. It's not quite as open as some of our other properties, mostly due to its remoteness, but we do offer visitation there. We have spring and fall field trips, and you can go on our website, nature.org/Oklahoma, and find out about those. And as long as I'm around, I'd be happy to, we do have a couple of little informal hiking trails. If you're interested in seeing it, I would go on our website, and it's got our contact information and all that, and look forward to having you out sometime.
So are you out there all day, every day? I mean, is that your 8 to 5?
That's my job. Somebody's got to do it. It might as well be me, right?
Down some weeds in my backyard. I just moved to a new house and I found a horny toad. So now I need to know, what do I need to put back? Because I was that person hacking down and trying to get Bermuda grass and things growing, and I just saw him last week. What do I need to put back there so I don't just kill his habitat?
Well, again, as was said in the film, the main thing you can do is if you've got ants around there, leave those alone. I mean, we've had thousands and thousands of ant colonies poisoned, and my family did that along with everybody else. And, we didn't know any better back in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid. So if you see the ants, leave them alone. If you see it out in the wild, try not to mess with it. Don't pick it up, bring it in the house and think it's cool. We are kind of supposed to leave them alone. But, there for several years, the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, they were actually asking people to report horned lizard sightings. And I think, in fact, if you go on their website, which is wildlifedepartment.com, you can actually access one of those forms. And they'd probably be interested to know, especially if it's anywhere east of 81 Highway, that you found a horny toad on your place.
Or Oklahoma.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's pretty impressive. So yeah, I would encourage you to go on the website, wildlifedepartment.com, and just search for Texas horned lizards, and you can find out the information you need.
Is there any certain plants that they necessarily like that the ants like that draw the ants in?
Well,
Johnson grass is a toad back there.
yeah, well, it's probably not the best thing, but native species, as was mentioned in the film, if you can plant native grasses and forbs, even if it's just in a flower bed or something like that, that's certainly better than nothing. So.
I saw some up here. Yep.
I had a couple of questions for the filmmakers. One, what did you use to film the documentary with? And two, who did the animations for the film?
The animation was done by our friend down in Norman, Sean Downey. He did an amazing job, and we had used him before on another movie. He had done a music video for us, and he had done, I think, some lizard and wildlife animation in the past that we had seen, and so he was kind of a shoe-in for us. And then for filming, we used a Panasonic HPX 170, so we shot this in glorious HD, and yeah, I mean, that's it, I guess, as far as what we shot with. And then, yeah, there you go.
Yes.
What year was Rhett put in that container?
Let's see, do you not know the answer to that? Does somebody else in the audience know? I'll give a t-shirt away. Can anybody answer that question?
39.
When he was put in?
1928. 39.
No, it's
8 what?
Hold on, I haven't heard it yet. I know what it is.
28.
1897. Yes, who said that?
1897?
T-shirt.
That works for us.
If you just let me know at the end, I'll get you a t-shirt.
Yes.
When I was growing up, I grew up outside of Chicago, and I bought a horned toad in a dime store. And I had it, it's probably about 1962, 64, I can't remember, but I took it and I put it in a fish aquarium, and I used to feed it mealworms. And that son of a gun lived for probably about 6 months, and actually I regret it. I forgot, I had a little jar top that I put water in, and I forgot to put water in there, and I think it died of dehydration. But I remember they had them in the dime store, and you could get them anywhere, but I used to feed it. Anybody ever, thought about feeding them mealworms? Because I remember used to.
That's what I did.
I've heard of people doing that, but I haven't heard of anybody being successful doing that. So that's interesting.
For a while.
A couple more questions. Yes.
Who's the narrator? I haven't figured that out yet.
Do it.
Do the voice.
Firstly, I've never been able to do that voice again. I did not have that voice in mind when I did it. When I originally went in to do it, I had this idea of doing this really, the horny toad, yada yada, that kind of thing. And Tony up there convinced me to go completely opposite direction and had me do this crazy Texas old man that was getting drunk in a saloon. And then he had me take that character and pretend to be whispering as that character, like a bunch of kids that just hit a softball into my backyard, and I was having them gather around and tell them this story about the horny toad. So that's kind of that hushed tone. But that's as much as I've ever done since we left it took me a long time to get used to it, but now I listen to the original recordings I did and it just sounds dumb, so.
This is just a little side note. I also wanted to thank all of our donors. We had a lot of family and friends donate money, and then deadCENTER Film Festival was a fiscal sponsor for us, and I wanted to make sure and thank them. Very supportive.
One last question. Yes.
Are there any plans to make a short for schools?
That is on the books. It hasn't happened yet. I'm wanting to do kind of an educational package to sell to schools, so it won't just be the movie, but some additional materials to help teach kids. I know that one of my friends teaches elementary school, and they do discuss the decline of the horned lizard in their biology book. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Seth. Thank you, guys.